Hi guys, in this video we're going to take a look at recursive patterns, and recursive just means repetitive. So if you look at this cartoon down here, this is a recursive pattern, 2, 4, 6, 8. We're going to write rules for recursive patterns in the form of a recursive equation. So let's take a look at some vocabulary before we get started on writing rules. Okay, our first definition is, what is a recursive equation? A recursive equation is an equation that shows how to calculate the value of the next term in the sequence from the value of the current term. And the current term we're going to refer to as our now. So we call this type of equation a now-next equation. So how do we get to the next term from the current term? Now I have 5, my next term is 10. We'll come back to that looking at the examples on the bottom. So our next definition is a sequence, and it's just a list of numbers, like in the cartoon, where each term is based on the previous term. And how we get to the next term is by using a set pattern or a rule. And that's what we're going to look at today, our patterns and rules. So before we do that, 2 more definitions. In a sequence, the domain is the term number, the first term. For example, in example number 1, the first term is 5. The second term would be 10. The third term would be 20. So our domain is the term number. But there's also some other words for domains, and we'll talk about these more in the next video. It's the set of all inputs when we start talking about functions. And those inputs are also referred to as x values. Range is our value. So our value of the first term in this sequence down here is 5. The value of our second term is 10, 15, and then 20. We'll also refer to these later on as the set of all outputs. Which are our y values. Okay, let's take a look at example number 1. Here's our sequence, 5, 10, 15, and 20. Our start is the first term in the sequence, and our first term in this sequence is 5. So we're trying to figure out, how do we get from 5 to 10, from 10 to 15, from 15 to 20. What's the rule, or what's the pattern? And this pattern is to add 5 to the previous term to get to the next term. So that's how we're going to write our now next equation. To get to the next term, we take our current term, which is our now, and we add 5. That's it. So let's take a look at number 2. This sequence is written a little differently. If I were to write this sequence out like number 1, this sequence would be -3, 6, -12, 24, and negative 48. So our start is the first value in the sequence, and that's negative 3. So how are we getting from 3 to 6, 6 to negative 12, negative 12 to 24, and 24 to 48? We are multiplying by 2, negative 2. So how do we get the next term to the next term from our current term? So our now next would be next equals our current term, which is now, times negative 2. And this is a sequence, so it keeps on going on forever and ever. Okay, try example 3 on your own. What's the start? What's the pattern of the rule? And what's our now next form? And then pause the video and then check back with your answer. Okay, our start is 3. That's our first term in the sequence. Our pattern is to add 1. So to get our now next form, our next equals now plus 1. So if we want to write this out as a sequence, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6, and we could keep on going on and on. If we were to write this in a table, the X column is our term number, and the Y column is our value. So the first term has a value of 3, the second term has a value of 4, the third term has a value of 5, and the fourth term has a value of 6. It's that simple. And with a now next, you always have to have a start, a rule, and it's always next equals now plus 1. Okay, here's some extra practice. It's not part of the notes, I didn't hand this out to you, but if you want to do some extra practice, now would be the time to pause the video, and then I will put the answers up there, and then you can check your answers. Okay, go ahead and check your answers. I'm not sure if you're able to see the you try on the bottom, example number 6. But one thing I want you to keep in mind, in the now next, we never have a minus right here. It's always a plus negative. So even though to get from 52 to 46 we're subtracting 6, we're actually also adding a negative 6. So it's always a plus and then negative 6 here. Same thing with this one up here. It was plus a negative 6. Now it's your turn to answer multiple choice question number 1 and the free response. So we're going to go a little backwards on this one. Here's the start, here's the rule, now times negative 3, or the next 4 terms, or the first 4 terms in that sequence. And number 2, write a now next rule for the following sequence. We just did this one. How do we get from 52 to 46, 46 to 40, 40 to 34, 34 to 28, and that's actually a duplicate, so you can't get that one wrong. Don't forget to submit your answers in the Google form.